I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. It's 6:32 now. And we can stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now I need to make a motion to move into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter, superintendent's contract. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, Kathleen, then I think we don't need to have everybody vote it on it, but we will move into, well, you guys can all vote on it if you'd like. We can move into executive session. And I'm sorry, I will let Michael, can you put a note up letting people who log on know that we are moving into executive session? I expect that we should be back. I don't know if it'll be 7:15-ish at the latest.
All right, sounds good. I can handle that.
Thank you. Okay, once everyone's seated, we're all here and we can move on with the action portion of our meeting. Is everybody seated? I can only see half the room.
We're good.
Perfect. So we're moving on to the action portion of our meeting. We have exited the executive session, in which we were discussing a personnel matter, and to let the public know, no votes were taken. And that's it. So our first action item on our agenda is a superintendent's contract extension. And in order to put the item on the table, I'd like to make a motion to extend Dr. Jones' contract and add 2 additional years through June 30th, 2028. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Sophie.
Open for discussion. I see you, Michael.
I'd like to move to table the motion. Because given the budget and everything else going on, I feel like this probably is the best time. And I think, speaking personally, I think we need more time as a board to consider the matter and things like that. I don't want this to be construed as a unendorsement of or anything, any kind of comment on Dr. Jones's conduct, which I find exemplary. But I don't think this is the meeting while we should be doing this in the midst of the budget. So I'd like to move the table the item.
Can I respond, Karen?
Sure. Yeah.
I actually think to the contrary, because of the budget, I actually think we need to be having this conversation. There are many superintendent positions open. We've put Dr. Jones in a very difficult, we've asked her to do a lot. And frankly, I'm not sure if we could find another superintendent right now, given the situation we are in. So I think it's exactly the right time to be doing it.
Yes, I was going to note there are two districts that just hired and went through the process of looking for and hiring new superintendents. There's 2 other districts that are currently looking as well. I've heard of a third that may be coming up as well. You know, especially with the large reduction and some of the things we're going to be talking about later in this meeting. I think we need somebody who has a good handle on what's going on. She just got a generally positive feedback from all of us. So I see no reason not to have this discussion this evening. And we are following her contract, as I mentioned earlier, contract section 3, clause B, which I can read, but in regards to responding to her request prior to the, 3 months prior to the end of her contract date. Wendy, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I too think that we should table the discussion. I think we should wait. We're still waiting for the FOIA ruling, which they're going to be having a briefing on May 5th. And that soon after, we should probably have a resolution, because the last thing I think we want to do is enter into a contract, because I don't know if we'll be able to get out of it or undo it. Easier to revote many of the things, but it's very difficult to undo a contract.
Just to let you know, and I know I sent information out to the board in regards to FOIA, May 5th, they're submitting briefings. We won't hear back anytime soon, because it still then has to go to their hearing commissioner and then over to the FOIA commission itself, just so you know. I wanted to just give you that as information.
Oh, we can agree to disagree, because that's not my information that I've heard. So
Okay, well, that's what we heard from the commission itself. So, okay, does anybody else have their hand up?
Karen, yeah, I'll just be repetitive with Mike, but I'm disappointed that we're doing this. We talked about it in private. I think it would have made a ton of sense to do this at the May 15th meeting, right in the middle of all the budget stuff. I think you want to see the results and get through something like what we're working on, and I think it's so much better to have a consensus contractual change than forcing something through. But as we know, the reality is you guys can force something through if you want. But I think to Mike's point, it's independent of the views on Tony. It's just about from what seems clean and makes sense from a procedural standpoint. You don't extend a contract when you're right in the middle of something major. You get to the other side of it and then say, great job. You know, here we are. So I would so much prefer to do this later. You know, I'm disappointed that we've brought this up now.
And just to add, this was also on our long-term board planning for later in the spring, and it was just added to the agenda as a last-minute item last week. It was the first time it was, you know, so in our meeting scope that we see every month. So all the more reason why I don't think this is appropriate time.
Again, it's following the contract provision, but I think there's a question on the table, so. Karen?
I just didn't know if anybody else had comments. No? Okay. Well, I don't know if you guys want to, you know,
Yeah,
Nope.
there's a motion on the table, so call the vote.
yes, well, no, nobody seconded Michael Joseph's motion so.
Oh, I'll second it.
You know, so we can vote on the motion to table it, and then we can vote on the motion. Okay?
Yeah,
Yes,
makes sense.
okay, so, can I see, well, I can't, you know, hopefully, I'm going to turn this over to our secretary to actually, take the vote only because I can only see, it's hard for me to see all of you guys. Laura? If I, you know.
I'm just getting a pen.
Perfect, thank you. And Wendy and I, since we're on Zoom, probably have to say verbally yay or nay.
We should all be doing a voice vote.
Okay,
I'll call the roll in order of the folks I see first, and that's Cody,
Yes to delay.
No, Kathleen Stowe.
Jen Behet,
No. No, Sophie Coven.
Yes.
And yes to delay.
okay, Wendy, and Karen.
no, I don't think we should table it. Don't forget to call on yourself in this costume. I do that all the time.
I think we should vote. Yeah, I'm a no for delaying. So that fails. So now we're calling the question.
More discussion? No?
No, we're next to the next one.
So the motion on the table is to extend Dr. Jones' contract by 2 years.
Let me say, I think this is disappointing that we are having a partisan fight here for no reason. This is the second time this year that we are making what should be a bipartisan decision, partisan, for absolutely no reason. There's no reason we should be taking this vote tonight.
It is bipartisan.
Okay, and the motion's on the table. We already had the discussion, so now you're kind of point of order. So, Cody.
What?
So can you run the vote?
Okay, so I will call the question, hearing no other discussion on the extension. Cody,
No.
Kathleen Stowe, yes.
Jen Behet,
Yes.
Sophie Coven,
Yes.
Dr. Mercanti Anthony,
Regrettably, no.
Wendy Walsh,
No.
Karen Hirsch.
Yes,
I myself am a yes. So that carries 5-3. On to the next item on our agenda.
thank
Karen.
you. The next item on our agenda is to just, to go through BET reductions, from the FY 26 Board of Ed operating budget. Do I have a second to get this on the table?
I'm happy to second. Well, not happy, but I'll second it.
Okay, just as a note, again, I would like to just comment, I know I said this at our meeting last week. Seeing as how there were some other items, which I will turn this over to the Budget Committee to sort of discuss. A lot of these items that are on this list are new for us as a discussion item. And I think while I think we might be able to vote on at least items that we've discussed at our last meeting, I think it would be, I'd like to at least share that I think we need to ensure that any of the newer items for reductions that we have tonight, that we make sure we are giving time for the public to have feedback at a meeting, whether we can do this at the start of and put a date on next week to do that, only because I do believe we should be able to give the public opportunity to opine. And a lot of these items were simply placed up for discussion yesterday. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand this over to our Budget Committee to lead this discussion.
Do you mean Ben and Cabinet, or you mean like Cody and?
Well, our Budget Committee is chaired by,
Why don't we have Tony start, Dr. Jones start, and then we can.
Okay.
Just to start us off tonight, which we've done the last two meetings, is just a review of the numbers. We do have 271 people already online, so I just want to make sure everybody understands what the numbers are. So Ben, if you could start us off with that, please.
Absolutely. The page in front of you, we have seen the last two meetings on the subject, but again, just a table set. The first line item, one, is the starting budget that the year we're sitting in. You can see the progression from the superintendent's budget. The Board of Ed adjustment is line 3. What was approved by the Board of Ed is line 4, the 202 and change. You can see then the adjustment that the BET made, which is line 5, bringing to the BET budget that's currently before the RTM at line 6, which is the 198 and change, which is a 2.99% increase. The one thing we just want to highlight is we go down to line 9. In a perfect world, you would say line 9 and line 5 would be the same, and we wouldn't be having line 7, 8, and 9. However, there's two additional items we want to address as you're looking at the budget adjustments. Line 7, as we talked before, there are 3 positions that were originally budgeted in the Board of Ed. They were then cut in the year we're sitting in. We did not build them into the budget that was presented to the Board of Ed. The town did not build them in either. Those positions are needed. They're currently without a budgetary home, but the work needs to be done, so we need to find the additional 334 and change. And also, as we talked about, we know with a high degree of confidence that the pre-K will need to be added early in September versus January, which we budgeted for. So knowing that expense, we thought it'd be prudent to budget for the 204, which is the cost of the 1 teacher and 2.4 paras. When you add those two numbers together, you get what we're trying to adjust is 4,587,962 is the adjustment versus the 4,048,621 that the BET adjusted. So again, the goal we have is to adjust our budget of finding savings of 4,587,962.
so just to interject, and I know I mentioned this last week, as we didn't have that extra preschool section in the FY 25-26 budget that numbers we had asked for, and we would probably have to go back for an interim. I think 4.1 is enough for us to have to ask for to cut additionally for that. I mean, our plan would have always been to go for an interim for that because it wasn't part of our request. I think it would be easier to focus on the 4.1 that was already reduced instead of adding, more. Right?
That's ultimately up to the board, however you want to pursue. We were just
I'm
presenting
just
the
putting that
math
out there
information.
for discussion for, we can put a pin in it for later. I just think we need to focus on what was reduced from the current budget that, request that we had made, and that wasn't part of that request. That's all. We can certainly discuss that later, but then I'll turn it back over to you guys for discussion.
If
All right.
there's no further discussion, I can go on to the next 2 slides before we get into the final slide. So we put just put a red line through this. So this was the original transportation scenarios that we presented. We had 5 scenarios. We presented at the April 24th meeting. We just wanted to show you that we did come up in a scenario 6. So we've maintained the scenario numbers, but we've came up with an additional scenario number 6. In the next slide, just because we're essentially running out of real estate, we dropped scenarios 1 and 2 because they really weren't getting much discussion. But scenario 5 is the one that we've talked about, has the greatest budgetary savings, but also the greatest schedule disruption. That involves the high school being moving their start time from 8:30 to 7:30. Based on the comments and conversations we had with the administration, we ran the numbers of making the high school 7:45. So really hone in on scenario 6. If you go to 7:45 for the high school and you add 15 minutes to the middle school and to all the elementary schools, you can have a bus reduction of 18 or just under $2 million reduction with scenario 6. So again, we put it between 4 and 5. 4 was the original one where we maintained the secondary schools and had the elementary schools start at 7:30, 7:45. So everything you've seen before, just the new scenarios, scenario number 6.
I just want to speak to the elementary, the scenario 4. The board's aware that we put out a survey to the elementary parents because up until really last Friday, what we had heard from people was that, little ones get up early. We probably need to look at maybe the younger grades going first. But within the first 15 minutes of sending the survey out, we had several hundred people that had replied. This was printed late yesterday to be prepared for today, and we had 1,886 people that had taken the survey, and then as of this morning, or this afternoon, sorry, we're up to just under 2,000. So it's obviously a big issue. And Mike, if you can put up the survey slide for me. And the first one we're looking at says parent or guardian, because I know this is information that will be helpful for the board in decision making. Okay.
Is this
So what
correct showing, Tony?
Yes, if you look on that left-hand side where it says parent or guardian, that's perfect. So what you're seeing here is the green is the number of and percentage of parents that said it would be very difficult for our family. You see a lot of green, and I think it's a lot more than what we anticipated. The blue is it's somewhat difficult for our family. So basically, when you look at this, you had, 75, 76% of the parents who are saying it would be very difficult. So that's the parent feedback. The next slide is the teacher input. And for the teacher input, the interesting thing is it's almost the exact opposite. It worked well for our staff. I think they were kind of excited about it. But again, it's just, two very different viewpoints there. The third one was looking at the non-certified staff. We did one for them as well, all of our paras and, custodians, everybody that gets impacted. And again, they were actually favorable. So from the staff side, it's favorable. From the parents, it was not. The very last one is just all rolled up together. And the last slide, that's why you see the 2.0. That's the average rating from everybody who took the survey. And I think it was very telling. I was enjoying watching it come in over the weekend because it's obviously very important because so many people took this survey so quickly. And when we do our family surveys at the end of the year, we have a great return rate, but we don't get it in 48 hours. So any questions about any of the scenarios?
I have a quick question. This is less about the scenarios than the surveys. Did the results that you just shared with us, did that incorporate all the additional people that have responded as of later today or no?
Well, that's what I was saying. As of right before this meeting, we were at just under 2,000. This was pulled when we were right around we were 1,886. So it's
I
not
ju-
enough to swing it one way or the other.
That's all I wanted to, I wanted to ask that. And then we didn't survey for middle or high school, just elementary.
Did not survey middle and high school. And what I've said, even on the high school, is it's been discussed for over a decade. And I think we know there's people on both sides that like 7:30. There are people that don't, like it. And this decision, and what I have said is that if this decision is made, it's really not about our input and what we think is best. It's about the financial situation that we've been put in. That's the only reason you're discussing this right now. And so, if we're going to ask the elementary one, we've never talked about, that was brand new. And I had no idea whether people would love it or not, but now we know.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, and again, I know it also supports the high school changes. It supports what was being discussed up at, in Hartford, where they were talking about trying to make a early, later start time change and doing research into it for a statewide requirement. And it failed there as well. People begged them not to do it because it was too financially incapacitating for almost every district to do. So very few followed suit when we did it initially.
And I think just to put scenario 5 and 6 in a perspective, so going from 7:30 to 7:45, your elementary and your middle school move by 15 minutes. So it's not a huge impact, but it has the cost of $500,000 to move 15 minutes, just to help you keep it in perspective.
Thank you.
I guess I want to say I really don't like this change. I understand that we're considering it because of the situation that we're in with the budget, but I was a parent at the high school the first time that we made this change and attended many meetings where people spoke very eloquently. We had lots of doctors, lots of educators here talking about how important sleep is, what a beneficial change this would be. And I think it really was a beneficial change for our students. And I think this would be to their detriment to our high school students to change it back. It just, and also families, everyone has adjusted to this. The reality is if we change it back, whether it's 7:30 or 7:45, that first period class, the kids are not really awake. They're not really paying attention. A lot of them haven't eaten their breakfast yet. They're kind of sleepy and hungry. So I think there's real academic impacts, and I think there are negative impacts to mental health. If we have to make this change, I would be much more in favor of the 7:45. And the reason for that is I imagine many people in this room are counting their steps every day and, wearing an Apple Watch or whatever. 15 minutes a day doesn't sound like such a big difference, but cumulatively over the course of the year, it really does add up to hundreds of hours of sleep, extra sleep that you would get. So I hope if we must do this, that we could at least give the high schoolers that extra 15 minutes. I also think that means, realistically, if you're coming to school to meet with a teacher before, like you can meet with a teacher at 7, you're not meeting with a teacher at 6:45 in the morning. So if we're going to consider these, that's the one that I would prefer.
Can I respond to Karen? Is it okay if we just talk over here so you don't have to call on us? Yeah, you're on mute, but that's okay.
Sorry, and I don't know if somebody there, it's hard for me to see hands up to call,
Okay.
but I'm going to keep my eye on it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to jump in, Cody, but I feel like we should start with transportation because, and I'm happy you did, Sophie, because it's kind of like the obvious one. It's the big number. I mean, it's kind of like, are the kids going to get up earlier or are we going to cut their teachers? So that's, it's like really that, sadly, that binary. And so I think that, I said it at the meeting last time, personally, it's not a huge issue for my family, but I have had a few friends since last week tell me that they will probably personally egg my house. But I am just going to have to accept that, and I think hopefully they will still hang out with me. But I think that we kind of have no choice but to do something for the high school. I am so happy too that we surveyed the elementary schools. That was, it was just a good exercise, if nothing else, to get their opinions. I too thought, oh, I was one of those people, don't like little kids get up early, but it turned out those parents, knew what they needed. And so we have to listen to our community. I think this was, like I said, this vote was before I was on the board. It was 5-3 at the time. It was a very, and we've gone 8 years. And I think it's probably had a lot of benefits. However, we're now at a situation where we have to reconsider. And I like your point, Sophie, on 15 minutes doesn't feel like a lot, but when you put it that way, if you're having extra help before school, the fact that it could have a 7 in front of it instead of a 6 in front of it is actually probably a pretty good thing. And also, if we're going to do something like so drastic, like maybe just going 45 minutes back rather than an hour is just enough to kind of see how it goes, really. And so I'm inclined to head in that direction as well.
Karen, maybe you should appoint a facilitator of this.
I haven't seen, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I can make a comment and then I can call some, I see Laura's hand up now.
I
Mike,
was offering to be your facilitator.
Oh, you can be my facilitator if you'd like to as well. I was just gonna say, much like Sophie and Kathleen, and I'm sure most people here, I mean, I think changing school start times, when we did it the first time, it was a very slippery slope, but we made that, we jumped in with both feet and made the decision to do so, to support this, social, the mental health and sleep habits of our high schoolers, based on scientific studies and whatnot. And I hate to be making this decision solely based on the financials, but our hand is being forced here, and certainly we can go through and cut and so many different ways and try to make up $2 million somewhere along the way. But I think that this is the unfortunate aspect of this is that this is one scenario that won't, I'm sure it will impact the classroom in some way, but I think it won't take away as much from the academic supports and things that we can give to our students. We're not cutting teachers. We're not, impacting programming and things like that by doing this. I too would suggest the 7:45 option. Again, if we change the school times again, I really would love to see if we can continue to monitor what sort of impact that would have on student growth and academic excellence, as well as student success on the fields, on the stage, and other extracurricular endeavors like a pilot program. If the impact of the students at GHS is, if changing it back is a huge change and we do see a major impact, it may have more impact than we realize. I think that that's something for us to keep our eye on, and push to bring it back if we have to, if we can going forward. But I'm loath to do this, but I don't see any other way to get to a budget number that we're being asked to without this.
Michael Joseph.
I mean, loathe is a good word. I think we have to think of a couple of perspectives here. I mean, there's a lot of different things and options, none of them great. But I think it would be incorrect to look at scenario 5 as or 6, the changing the high school start time as well. It's an easy one to do because it doesn't touch academics. I think to Sophie's point, I think it does touch academics. I think we saw finally in just a Greenwich Together survey last week, some positive trends in all of our social emotional data and coming out of COVID and things, and having the conversation that this community had 8 years ago, to go back on that for what seems like an odd reason, or not a reason that's grounded in anything other than to reach a number, is unfortunate. I'm not quite sure, because we don't have a budget, exactly what decisions we're making tonight. One thing that's worth saying, I think scenario 3 is probably a no-brainer if we have to do something. I think it sounds like changing elementary is off the table, given the survey. But if we're trying to back into a different number, scenario 3 is pretty, which we haven't really talked about at all. You're talking about 20 minutes to the middle school, 15 minutes to some of the middle schools. I think that is interesting and worth considering, especially if the situation changes. One thing that is also worth noting that I actually didn't realize on scenario 6, if I'm right. So scenario 6 is the new one, which GHS starting at 7:45. And if I'm reading this right, that currently Ham Ave, JC, and New Leb start a half an hour earlier than our other elementary schools. Is that right?
On the scenario, yes.
No, currently.
They do.
Yes.
And they get out.
Yes, they do.
Right. So that's fascinating, and maybe an interesting benefit here. It's curious that schools with obviously our most disadvantaged populations and most challenging and have the biggest gaps in skills compared to the other schools start a half an hour earlier than the other side of town. I didn't realize that. So if we're talking about the importance of sleep and things, it's curious that, I mean, that's clearly a structural problem that scenario 6 actually fixes, because it gives that side of town more another half an hour of sleep, which could actually help the improvement act that yeah, this has to do with the buses.
It has to do with where the buses are coming from, because you're talking about the west side of town. So if you have buses that are primarily before them dropping off the east side, you've got to be able to get buses over. And it's how they structure the routes. We can certainly go in and look at it again, but it's structured that way for a reason. I mean, and I thank the board for putting this meeting off on Tuesday and I'm waiting till Thursday, because this was one of the primary reasons when we knew we needed a new scenario. It takes hours and hours and hours. And thank you to Kayla Coker, who runs all these for us. But there's definitely a reason for it. And I can get an answer for you.
And then what happens at the high school with both morning to what Kathleen was saying, with both morning and afternoon supports and clubs and activities and stuff with the change to 7:45? What would that do to things?
I think that's part of the whole discussion going forward. But quite frankly, I've been here 6 years. We've done something different every year because Flex was such a mess in many ways, for clubs, for everything. And so I've had a couple of high school students reach out who actually like it because they feel like they could go back to having some clubs after school. And right now they're already coming, according to the student input that I've received, and I don't know how widely spread, but some of the clubs are already there at like 7:30, 7:45 right now. So they felt like this actually would be helpful for them.
Anyone else? Facilitator speaking?
I can just speak kind of anecdotally to your question, Michael Joseph, that, for students who are participating in sports after school, it's hard for them to go to extra help. And so going before school is ideal. And a lot of teachers get to school early because they're trying to beat the traffic. So, I am concerned about that, that it's a good time to go in to get extra help, make up a test. For kids with 504s who need to need extra time to be there early in the morning to start, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's something that we would have to grapple with. This is why it's extremely less than ideal.
But then anecdotally, on the positive, I heard from a bunch of people at the high school today saying that, we adjusted for sports, but that this will certainly be helpful again to sports because they can get up, up the coast, if you will, by 4 o'clock, which is when many of the games start. And then, of course, there will also be more light, which, as we all know, we're challenged by. So.
Yeah, I was going to say additionally, I mean, the school ran at those hours for so many years and it worked. you know, I know the studies were done focused on giving the students at the middle and high school more sleep. They didn't really focus on the elementary school students. They didn't suggest the change to a later start time for them. It was based on the circadian rhythms that start around puberty, which is why we really never looked to do anything for the elementary students at that point. But again, anecdotally, students will still miss less school if we do this. If they're student athletes or they have other after-school activities, it gives students an opportunity maybe to do clubs if they're, not going to a game and they want to be able to have the opportunity to participate there. The school is doing practice, which is what students were able to do prior to this. So maybe it'll give them more opportunities for that. And then finally, I think also, I think that there's a lot of benefits for them if they'll be coming home earlier, right? They were stuck in traffic, they were missing classes to get to games, and stuck, coming home much later. So if we're actually able to get to the games on time, we'll miss the traffic and they'll be able to get home earlier to be able to get their work done, or at least hopefully, so that's I would hope would be a positive in an otherwise, unpopular decision that we might have to make here.
Ms. Stowe is raising her hand.
I also just on behalf of every student feel like I have to pick scenario 6 because you actually go to school less, it seems, than versus scenario 5. Is anyone else following that? So the proposed time is 7:45 to 2:10, whereas the other one is 7:30 to 2:15. Am I missing something? On
Scenario 5 is what we just put it back to what it was originally was before the change made. Scenario 6, we just did the math associated with the 45-minute adjustment. So it is the
Got it.
5, you're absolutely right, it is the 5 minutes, but scenario 5 just went back to the baseline.
Got it. Okay. I felt it was like the express train or something. Okay. Got it. All right. That makes sense.
And
Thank you.
I see Wendy's hand up. I know it's probably hard for you to see that, Laura.
Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
So while Cody and I don't know if you both realize, we are products. We of the 7:30 a.m. start time, and we did survive. To all of you students and people, angry parents, angry people that are emailing us. And I have a high schooler, he's not going to be thrilled with me, but I think getting home from sports is always a plus because you can eat dinner, you can do your homework and get to bed earlier. But I'd be open to scenario 6 too. So either one of them I'm open to. I think to your point, going in early for extra help, 7:45 is a good start time. It's not as bad as 7:30.
But what do you think what we could have accomplished with an extra 15 minutes every day?
I'm going to call on myself and say that I think we should remind the BET once again that we gave them 4 million in revenue. And I think we should send them a bill for 2 million for the private school busing so that the town can cover it. So that's my feedback. I am consistent. Are we ripe for more discussion?
Well,
Yes, go ahead. Oh, Cody got you.
I'd be remiss to remind my peers that the reason we have to pay for private school busing, which makes no sense to me, is the mandate from the people in Hartford.
Including someone you know.
Well, as an aside, I was going to mention it that, people who live in town, whether they have students in public or private school, are paying taxes, and some of that obviously goes towards our schools, including if you have a student in private school. It is a state mandate that we provide busing for private schools, but only if they reach a certain threshold of students. And I was going to say, Dr. Jones, have we, I know in the past, we've reached out to double check that, they usually request. I know some of the schools chose not to get transportation because they thought they would be at or under. Have we checked recently to make sure that they're all at or above?
Yes, it's an annual report that we check every year. And the one that usually is right on the cusp is Eagle Hill. And I've already met with them twice in the last few months. So they are on notice that if they have the same percentage in the fall that they have right now, they will have to pay for their own buses. Because it has to do with how many students live in Connecticut and how many students live in New York that actually attend their school. And that's the one school that can easily swing to have more New York students.
Okay, so there's a possibility that things could change there too. Although I have a feeling if they're close enough to the cusp, we would still extend that busing to them. Yeah, I mean, I'm not thrilled with this, and much like Laura has said, we certainly have given them back revenue, and I believe the private school busing was, because, obviously the taxes go towards the town, and that money was, I think the town originally paid for the busing for private school, but a few years ago, they put it back onto our plate. Is that correct? To come out of our
That's-
budget?
Yes, that's correct.
So do you know what year that was? Just out of curiosity, I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, that predates me.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that is another point to be made, but
I don't mean to go backwards, but I did have a Title I principal just share that the Title I schools are running earlier, and this has to do historically, I guess, because the parents need to go to work. So it's actually very positive for them. And in this survey, if I disaggregated by school, which I did as well, I just didn't bring it tonight, Ham Ave was the school that was much more positive about an earlier start. So I would say that brings the validity to that.
Again, I know this was something that we as a board discussed last week without the additional scenario 6, though it's still sort of in line with some of the ideas that we went over last week. I don't know if the budget committee would like to take a vote on this separately, and then we can discuss some of the other ideas. We can always revise if we need to vote, but that's just my thoughts. I don't know if you guys want to take a vote on this, just to get an idea of what else we might need to look at.
So I think we should kind of maybe go through everything else quickly. But I do think that maybe we should have a view on transportation if we're all for it. Okay, that's probably very helpful. But I think otherwise, we obviously have some people, there's a lot of people online. This was posted. We should probably discuss some of the thinking real quickly behind all the other items. But I do think at the end of the day, it's probably important we give a view on transportation tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was saying, I don't know if you guys wanted to do a straw poll or,
Do you want a sense of the meeting?
yeah, I just, that's why I'm wondering if you guys wanted to do a sense of the meeting just on this now, just to sort of see. I think it makes a difference on.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
I mean,
I'll ask each person about their preferred scenario. Is that what you want
Well,
me to
I
ask?
could do a sense of the meeting and maybe just lead with one of the items. So,
Okay.
I'd like to take a sense of the meeting that the high school starts at 7:45 a.m., overhauling the 3-tier bus route for a change of $1,957,842.
Which scenario?
6. right?
6. And it's not an actual motion, it's a sense of the meeting, but I guess someone can still second it.
I'll second it because I think it will help us with our discussions as we move forward.
I'll make
I
my,
can call the votes. I mean,
It's discussion, so go ahead.
I'll just
Question.
make mine easier. I'm relatively indifferent between scenarios 5 and 6, and actually generally all of them, and so would follow whatever consensus we can get amongst everybody else.
Kathleen, what's your pleasure?
The motion I put forth, so the 7:45.
Okay. Me, I'm no for everything.
That's the one consensus.
And then Jen?
I would say like Cody, I'm between 5 and 6.
Okay, Miss Coven?
I would be reluctantly supportive of 6.
Doctor?
I am only supportive of scenario 3.
Okay, Wendy? What's your preference? Oh, you're on mute.
Reluctantly between scenario 5 and 6.
Okay, Karen, what's your feeling?
My feeling is that this is a painful exercise that I wish we truly did not have to go through, but I think the only way to get where we need to go is to have to make a, which I said last week, is to change school start times again. And unfortunately, I'm much like Jen and Wendy. I'm between scenarios 5 and 6, although I would prefer to do none of them like Laura, but I think that, we have to be somewhat responsive. That's the only thing I can think. It's 5 or 6, preferably 6, but
Dr. Mercanti Anthony is the outlier at number 3.
No, I don't,
You, Laura.
remember, I don't disagree. I'm indifferent between 3, 5, and 6.
So you're changing your vote. Okay.
Mine already was that. It was a state of indifference.
But a minor favor, but all right. So I don't know where that leaves us.
Okay, let's keep going then.
Okay. Who's gonna lead us through the other
well,
horrible options?
I mean, neither one of us want to do it.
I was happy to do it, but I think the way things have gone, it's better for the ruling party to take us through this.
So Dr. Jones, so I'm happy to Dr. Jones, would you like to take us through it, or I'm happy to I mean, this came from 1,000 people, right? So
Are we going through the options that were also provided last week? Because this.
I think we had a sense of the meeting on those last week, so
So
I think they're off the table. I think everyone showed they didn't want to do the advanced learning program, and the sense of the meeting was also against pay to play, right?
agreed.
So I think now
We're
we're kind of at the next list of options.
Okay.
Yeah.
next
I
list.
know we took a definite sense of the meeting on ALP. I'm gonna go back and look. I don't remember fully on pay to play. It did not seem like it was something that the board was in favor of, though. If I'm not incorrect.
Go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Okay, and I, just like I've done the last 2 meetings, I just want to start out and say this list is generated by input from GOSA, from GEA, from the Board of Ed, from community members. So there's a lot on here. The first 2 items were built into the budget this year. The first one is Positive Pathways, which is a program that we were trying to build for elementary, and it's specifically for children who are more dysregulated. And as you know, we've been seeing a positive turn in the number and the percentage of students who are outplaced. Which again allows us to have, a more positive budget where we can put dollars where we need them. And I will say, when you're looking at a program like this, I know it's easy to cut it because it doesn't exist, but that 343,000 actually saves money. And I know that's hard to see, so I just have to say that. And to give you an idea, when we have a little one and we need a setting like that, they get on a bus in Greenwich. They usually, right now, it's up around Ansonia. They're on the bus for about 45 minutes. Most of those parents would rather have their children be able to go to a neighborhood school in Greenwich. But it is kind of, it's challenging to cut it because it's just going to cost us more, actually. HAMAV extended day. I know the board's talked a lot about that. I will say the HAMAV extended day, one thing I'm very thankful for is all of the funding from the Alliance, who this year and also hopefully next year, they've really helped do a lot of power tutoring and things of that nature for students. And so we've been working on that, but both of those were brand new. The K-5 reduction is going to be based on minutes. That's a 2.0 FTE. The board talked a lot about this last year, but it was a bigger number. I think we were originally looking at 6 and 7, and there was not the support from the board to cut those kind of minutes, but this does shave minutes from PE. The next one is an outgrowth out of last week's meeting where there was some discussion about world language, or even from the end of last year. So instead of looking at one of the suggestions that was put forward, well, actually even by two different groups, was just do away with all world language because it was a bigger number. This actually is third grade. It would eliminate the third grade program. And it says 2.0 because you have to go in and really calculate how many students are in third grade next year. So we would have to refine this number. Number 5 is looking at the cross teaming. This has to do with Central. They have some cohorts that are a little bit smaller. I think this board talked a lot about being committed to teaming. What this does is more than likely 6th or 7th grade team. You'll have a teacher who has to do a little bit on 6th grade and a little bit on 7th grade. So for a couple of years, we would have to go cross team. And how that really impacts the teachers is the way their schedules are structured. When you're part of a team, you share the same students. Well, if the teams are meeting, at the same time, or you're on one schedule or the other, you're going to miss team meetings and talking about students. And that's why we're committed to the teaming, but that would cause a cross team of 2.0 positions. The Greenwich High School house restructure is probably one of the bigger items on here. It's 5 different positions that goes across GOSA, GEA, and GMEA. When this one was put on here, I did quite a bit of research because I didn't really know the history of Greenwich High School. Cantor House was put in right around 2003, and it was after, and again, I learned all this through studying the history of it. It was after a year-long study, because the high school was going to hit the threshold of 3,000 students and was getting very large. That was the anticipated, so they put in Cantor House. And the house, and so obviously that was the additional house administrator, which people in the community know this history. The dean of student and the assistant dean, those came in right around 2012 when Sidney Freund, Dr. Freund was the superintendent. He was here for 2 years. His second year, he put in the dean of student primarily to help with discipline. I'm sure it's morphed and changed since 2012. The assistant deans, all 5 were put in because again, the houses, all 5 were established by then, and they were put in to be a 0.4 for each house. And over time, they are now full-time. And then there are 3 counselors. This includes 1 counseling position and an admin assistant. So that's what the positions are. That's where the history comes from. The restructure adult ed, adult education is required by law. The enrichment portion, which is like when people take guitar or they want to go take ballroom dancing, whatever it is we're offering, that's not required, but this actually just maintains to make sure that we have what is required by law, but it's taking a GOSA position and actually readjusting that. More than likely, we would not have a GOSA position doing that actual work. And then the print shop, we've talked about the print shop a lot over the last 2 years. We used to run just 2 years ago, fully functioning print shop for the town of Greenwich, also for the schools. We had the huge flood. So instead of restoring it, we actually went to a totally different model to see how it would work. And we have a courier. We use an outside service in Stamford. This would totally eliminate it. So people need to take care of their own copying. Town of Greenwich could do their own budget books, whatever they need to do. We would do our own. And we would no longer have a print shop at all. The non-personnel, Schoology is a student software. Again, this was a recommendation. High school is the building where we still have Schoology and Google Classroom that are both utilized. In K-8, we're all Google Classroom now. That change was made about 2 years ago for K-8. We do have some curriculum materials inside Schoology as well. So even though it's not a big dollar amount, there's some migration work that would have to happen. And I had another good question from somebody today about Schoology. So we're trying to be very thorough about that. Again, it's not a huge dollar amount, but it was somebody's suggestion. Curriculum instruction materials, professional development consultant, those are coming down where we know they're manageable, but not so much that we actually can't do what we need to do. The board is well aware, we've been implementing the science of reading in our early grades, our writing units all the way through the elementary, like K-5. We have that work to do next year because we have the updated materials, and it will take our consultants to actually come out and help everybody learn how to implement those materials. So, but it shaves off enough to be a help. And then the transportation at the bottom. So those are the items that are on here tonight.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to open discussion and just simply say, you know, again, these are, you know, for the public that are listening, you know, GOSA representatives, GEA representatives, and members for both, because I've heard from a lot of staff as well. These are items as that the board had discussed, as Dr. Jones mentioned before, things like a reduction in PE or world language. And some of the items are a little bit, you know, are newer. So it doesn't mean that every single item here is on the table. It's just that these are things that we have discussed before. There are a few new ideas, and they've come from various different areas. And I'm happy to, you know, if we want to go item by item or section by section, which would you prefer? You know, Kathleen and Cody.
Sophie has a question.
I just want to make a comment about the positive pathways, just starting at the top, I guess. You know, specifically the Board of Education, and during my tenure anyway, has been tasked from the BET with thinking about how can we bring down the cost of special education. And Positive Pathways is actually a program that is intended to do that, and also to, you know, improve the quality of our special education services for our most vulnerable students. So it feels deeply ironic to be considering to cut a program that has been, you know, thoughtfully developed to meet the needs of those students and would be, you know, resulting in cost savings over time. You know, I understand that we want to cut programs that don't exist yet, as opposed to programs that we all already enjoy and that the students are attached to. But this just feels absolutely penny wise, pound foolish. So, you know, it feels like a terrible prisoner dilemma to be cutting this program, because I know next year will be like, well, how much money do we spend doing all these other things because we didn't have Positive Pathways, you know? And so I just feel like it's incredibly foolish. But I would cut it if I had to, as opposed to cutting, say, PE minutes, you know, which is going to impact our students today, that we're taking something away from them that they have right now.
You know, I mean, that's why I wanted to see how you guys wanted to run this discussion. And I would say, I think one of the other things I'd like to mention, you know, suggestion, well, something that we were working on anyway, and certainly something that was brought forward from the vice chair as well. And I drafted a letter to BET on our behalf. I'm happy to share it with you guys after the meeting, but I'd love to have a discussion of also sending a letter to the BET respectfully requesting that they reopen the discussion on budget in support of the RTM SOMR, as well as giving us that option. I know we're trying our best here to work and show them that we are willing to meet them at least partially in some of those reductions that they made. Again, I think I mentioned this last week. It's been mentioned several times. The method with which they made those reductions was slightly flawed in the fact that they gave a flat 3% increase for staffing increases, salary increases, and ours does not work that way. So they were already off by, I believe it was $1.7 million. They reduced 2 staff members, thinking that they could consolidate us with the town, and towns were paid for, but we had to put them back in at our cost. So, you know, I'm hoping that they will be willing to see that we're willing to work on this. But any of these reductions that we're talking about now, I mean, even including a change in start time, are going to have an impact on our students. And as much as we want to protect the students and the classroom and find ways to make reductions elsewise, all of these will have some kind of negative impact, but we know that we, have to be fiscally responsible, and respect the request of BET. But I'd really love to respectfully ask them to sit down at the table, and reopen discussions. I'd love to see if the board itself would want to sign on. And I'm happy to send that letter to you guys, because I'd like to get that, and make revisions if you guys are up for that as well.
Ms. Behet.
Yes, I would absolutely support sending a formal letter back to the BET. We are in this situation, okay, and the public has heard it, and there have been discussions and articles, and there have been emails and outcry about this situation. And frankly, it's a situation that doesn't need to be. We are impacting students. Students are not dollar signs. You cannot equate the two. And looking at cuts that hurt our kids in any way, we are a district that is so proud because we're distinction and we have all of these great accolades. And that's the first thing that we want to cut, is the education portion of it. Yes, could we be a little bit, could we make cuts here and there that don't impact the classroom and don't impact instruction, programming, et cetera? But, we've heard from the community. The RTM has heard from their community. We have had, emails written, and I really strongly, strongly support sending a formal letter back to the BET, because those actions and that vote put us in this position. And you've heard it from most of the people on this board here saying that we are loath to make these cuts, to push us back where we want to have the best for our children. People buy in this town because of the educational system, and we do. We have a great educational system. So instead of investing in it, we're going to pull it back and impact those kids. How is that fair? I'm sorry, I don't see it. So I'm happy to support that formal letter back to the BET.
I'll call on myself for a minute. I think all of these ideas diminish our program. It's not what our students and families would benefit from. So obviously, I think it's all garbage. So are we taking a vote, or are we gonna?
To kind of quickly go through the items. Yeah. So, and I think in the interest of time, let's kind of move it. So,
Hand is up as well.
who's?
Wendy?
Okay.
Wendy, go ahead.
I just want to say, I think we are looking at the wrong things. I mean, we're not even really looking at administrative bloat. I'm not saying, I'm just using this as an example, but I saw 105 secretaries or administrative assistants. I don't know if that's the right number. Is it? I don't know, but maybe that I would rather maybe eliminate a secretary or two. Maybe we don't need 3 at an elementary school or a middle school, instead of cutting gym or anything else that touches children's programming.
To be fair, I don't know the exact number of assistants, but a lot of them are not quote unquote secretaries. A lot of them are administrative assistants that actually are doing more than what you might think under that. But I don't know the exact number. I don't have the budget book in front of me.
Okay, and also we have 500 less students in our school district now, 500, and we have 20 more teachers. And going back, we should get back to 2019 levels.
Well, again, we
Yeah.
don't have 500 less, but I would think more importantly, and I'm happy to share again with you that data, we also have more need than we did in 2019 with students that need academic and psychological supports in other ways, special education programs and things like that. We also have added staff for preschool, which is state mandated. So a lot of those numbers that you're seeing, and the additions and the increases are in those areas. that are. you know,
Dr. Jones has some information.
Well, and I think, Karen, what you're speaking to, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but all of this data is out there. We presented the budget in November. We have done hours of meetings, hours of information and data, and we have graphs and charts that actually show that we now have gone from 11% to almost 16% in special education. You must, by law, have staff in order to teach those children and provide services. So what we have done, we've been very lucky, actually, that we've had a slight decline in enrollment so that we could take, and when we didn't need a fourth grade teacher, and move that across to special education. Had we not seen a slight decline in enrollment, we would have a whole bunch of teachers. So I think it's really important that we encourage the BET to go back for those members that didn't look at the data.
Okay, so Michael Joseph, go ahead.
I was going to, can we talk a little bit about, flesh these out a little bit? Because I guess I'm curious about some of the line items. I know nobody wants to talk about, different bad decisions and every one of these is going to have its supporters. I don't know about Schoology. That seems like everybody should be on the same system at the high school, probably. The teacher who uses Schoology is going to be mad at that, but I have to deal with that. But that's only 32,000. What happens with grade 3 world language? What is, because I remember us talking about this before. So what would students have instead of grade 3 world language? So what happens with that time?
We would have to go back in and look at the schedule. This year, we made a commitment in K-5 for everybody to have 60 minutes of planning. So that's what really drives it, is making sure we have the planning time, and we have to look at where that's going to come from. And it would just be a matter of going in and calculating the minutes, literally school by school.
Okay, so should I just go through the list? Okay.
Yeah, I think if you want to go from the top to the bottom, I think that.
Real fast. Yep. Okay. So positive pathways, I think I agree with Sophie. I think it's penny wise, pound foolish. It's easy to get rid of things that haven't yet started. But I think when we have, I think it's going to end up costing more than 340.
Just be very clear. So we suspect that program will keep special education students in district. Any out of district placement is anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000 per student. So it's not a number, it's not a lot of students where you make that money back up quickly.
No, thank you.
What about the
Hamilton-
extended day at
Hamilton
HAMAV?
Avenue extended day. Does anyone have a thought on that?
Well, I was just going to ask a question about positive pathways and Hamilton Avenue Extended Day, but for Hamilton Avenue Extended Day, I think it's something that the board really liked the idea of and supported, but I know that it was still in the process of sort of working through, would we be doing it for part of the school, the full school? I know that discussion was still happening. And if we put that on the back burner for 1 year, would that, I would think, and I'll ask Dr. Jones, because I'm certainly no expert, would that give you guys more time to really get that program really set so everybody knows exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to run? Would give you more time to plan?
I mean, we can always have more time to plan, but this is actually the third year it's been presented.
Okay, and then the other question in regards to positive pathways, if we have to reduce that now and we end up finding funding for part of it or in some other way, is that a program that could be started part of the way through the year if we needed to, if we were able to get some kind of grant, or we were able to, go for an interim for it if we find we really need it this year?
I think we could start it mid-year. You probably would not have the same success you would have bringing students back. Because right now, what we try to do is if we have students that are in and out placement and they are on one of those long bus rides, what we do is we work hard to say to the parents, now we have a great program. Would you like, to come back inside the district? And we've been successful bringing some of our kids back. So I'm not sure we would get the same. We also would not look at a grant for a program like this, because when the grant goes away, it's kind of like ARP, how we had to be so thoughtful what we put on the grant, because when it goes away, the funding goes away, and it would put more into the operating budget.
Okay, I mean, honestly, like, you know, everybody else has said, this is something that that you had looked into and found ways to, because it was a request from the BET that we find ways to keep our students in district and not have such exorbitant, out of district, costs. If we could find ways to help retain those students and find a way to make sure that they were supported. And I do think that, you know, if it is $100,000 to, you know, as Michael Joseph said, all you need to do is keep 3 to 4 students in the district, and you've already found that this was working, that's savings. You know,
I don't know how anybody would take advantage of it if they were already being outplaced. That would they outplace their kid mid-year? I just don't think that that's practical. Future kids. Okay.
Okay. So I would argue for the Ham Ave that it's a similar situation in that you are that kind of remediation and addressing student needs at the early level of Hammond Avenue is probably quite possibly keeping costs down later on. Those, you know, you're meeting those needs in elementary school with the extended day and the more time, and that's preventing bigger issues in middle school and high school and higher costs of interventions and other sections at that level. So I think you could probably make the same argument for Ham Ave. That's the more popular of the two arguments I'm going to make. The second argument is that I do not think this is a trade-off, and it's a trade-off about choices and priorities. I don't think it's ethical to cut programs targeted at supporting students and getting to grade level in favor while keeping some of the programs that we have that are supporting students to accelerate beyond grade level. And before we go to cut Ham Ave, I think we have to seriously look back at ALP and some of those other things that nobody wants to touch. But it's not ethical to cut the programs for students to get them to grade level and keep accelerated programs, particularly for the students on the other side of town.
All right.
I was gonna say, I have a response. I just, you know, and I've said this many times before. If you're talking about advanced language, you know, for ALP, which we talked about last week, and nobody wanted to reduce that at all, you know, or make the changes there. I look at ALP as the other end of special education. You're still providing a special education for students that need more, but they need more in a different way. And I think it really supports students at all the levels, because it's still giving, you know, it's reducing the class sizes in other ways and giving those students a more targeted education to, you know, and focus on their needs as well in the traditional classroom, as well as those that are moving.
Certainly, that's certainly not a progressive position, Karen.
Yeah.
Cody.
You won't hear this from me a lot tonight, but I actually like these two programs and would not. I think we thoroughly evaluate, or I should say, I like the Ham Ave one a lot. I think it's probably one of the highest dollars spent per student outcome improvement of anything that we look at, and I think that's why it survived the scrutiny the first time we did the budget. The other program I think is the key to it is to have some sort of follow up. I won't be here, but someone else should a year from now say, hey, what did we see? It's very simple. If that program doesn't cause any outplacement changes, you should get rid of it. If it does, you'll know what the savings are. It's worth experimenting. So I think both of those are not the right area to focus on. Again, there's lots of other areas to focus on, but I wouldn't do those.
Cool. Keep going. K-5 reduction in PE. I think we discussed this last year. I think the community kind of spoke on this, but I'm putting it back out to anybody else who wants to talk about it.
I think we can move on down.
Wendy, does anyone have anything? Okay. All right, cutting grade 3 world language. I mean, I'll start. I think that perhaps it's not the perfect program, the elementary school world language program, but I think it is I don't know of any high performing school district that doesn't offer foreign language in the elementary school. So I'd be concerned about doing that.
They all do. And most of them in Southern Fairfield County are K-5.
I do not know if you guys want to discuss the CMS, GHS. What do you want to go to next?
I'm happy to talk about both if you'd like.
Sure.
I mean, as for
Go to Central Middle School cross team.
As for Central Middle School cross team, you know, I know that they have a slightly smaller student population currently, but we're rebuilding the school and I expect that those numbers will see like Glenville. If you build it, they will come. And part of the things that we have been talking about and even just talked about earlier today with Dr. Jones is that we really focused on ensuring that there was consistency vertically and horizontally for all our students, no matter what elementary school you go to what middle school, everybody walks into the high school with the same, you know, academic understandings. And I think to make a change to the, you know, the teaming model at Central Middle School, where the other two middle schools have that teaming model, will give more opportunity, much like Michael Joseph said, you know, for things for kids to fall through the cracks, right? You know, it's ensuring that, you know, the teams, they have an opportunity, they get together, they discuss students who may be at risk or students who may need a little more support or students who are excelling and may need to move forward. They won't have the opportunity to do that if we change the teaming model at Central Middle School, less giving, I think, you know, it's not a lack of equity for those students there versus the students at Western and Eastern. And I don't feel comfortable making that change and giving them a different experience. And as for the House administrators change, the restructuring, I'm exceptionally concerned about that. You know, we are sitting here, we just, as much as nobody likes it, we're all, you know, the majority of us are in support of making some kind of change to school start time. The majority of us had said we'd be between 5 and 6, which is the high school. Even if, you know, you said 3, 4, you know, 3, 5, and 6, 5 and 6 were there. That's the high school. I think it would be a huge change for us to change the start time and then change the structure of the House system at GHS. I don't think it's fair, and I think it's absolutely inappropriate of us to discuss placing the brunt of all of these budgetary reductions placed solely at the high school level. It's just far too much change at once. I mean, we heard from a lot of staff and a lot of parents as well, talking about the need for, you know, the staff at the high school. You know, they're the first line of contact for parents, for students who come in and need support. You know, they have their full workloads of staff there. And I truly think, you know, it's much harder than it was in the past to provide support for these students, and they need support more quickly. You know, parents want responses. They don't like to wait. And, you know, a lot of that also helps. But mostly it really supports students with other needs at the high school as well. A lot of these, you know, the assistant deans and things like that work on special education and other areas. I think it would be detrimental to make two huge changes like that at once.
Anyone else? Wendy? Nobody has hands up? Okay. The non-personnel portion.
No, restructuring adult ed. Could we talk about that? I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's under, yeah.
right. That seem, I'm admittedly, I don't really know much about it, but it doesn't, if I'm sticking with the theme of it not impacting our children, I'm okay with that change.
It's $72,000. Not gonna get us to 2 million.
No, but
No, but
it's something. Okay.
if you're looking at that, right, it's not just that, you know, you have the FTE for that, and then you look at it eliminating somebody, you know, the print shop. You know.
Yeah, I think those are two
I think
no-brainers.
it's ridiculous that I didn't realize that we were doing outsourcing all of our print shop and still are paying for the town's printing. No, nay, I say.
Okay, so I think we have those 7 and 8 are no-brainers. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, moving to non-personnel, going once, twice? No, okay.
No, Wendy had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Wendy, go ahead.
No worries. Can we just go back to number 6 for a minute? Can someone help me out in understanding how eliminating a house impacts the other houses and how many more students per remaining house? Like, what does that look like? And how many more counselors? How many more how many more students per counselor? What will the caseload of the counselors look like? How many more students are they going to have?
Are there around 500 students or so per house?
I think Dr. Jones can answer that question. Go ahead, Tony.
What I want to say is I do have those numbers. I actually went out just when I knew this was going to be on here, but I don't have it formally ready for tonight. So it's something I would want to send to the board because I went out and just looked at other high schools in the region. And the way that you generally are looking is like counselor per student, admin per student. And so we're still okay. I can say that, but I would like to have the actual numbers and perhaps some comparables so that you would, know what you're looking at.
Okay. That would be great if you could get that to us. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. All right. Non-personnel, Schoology software. I did get a few hate texts on this today, so I am not commenting on this. I'm going to let others do that.
It's not broke. Maybe we don't fix it.
But sorry, I'll raise my hand.
Oh,
Go ahead, Wendy.
I don't think we need Schoology and Google Classroom. I feel like most people have transitioned away from Schoology and they're using Google Classroom. I mean, are we paying for both?
So if you go back really pre-COVID, we did have both, but it was primarily 612 was on Schoology, K5 was on Google Classroom. During COVID, almost all but literally a handful of teachers in middle school also solely utilized Google Classroom. So we were paying just over $100,000 for Schoology initially, about 120. And so once we realized, because we run the usage on all of our software every year, and once we knew it wasn't being utilized in K8, we were able to reduce that. That's why it's such a small amount now, because it's only at the high school. And in K8, we have teacher licenses so that that's where the curriculum is sitting. We would have to migrate some of that over. And the Google Classroom for the entire enterprise suite, because Google is known for working with schools, it's like $31,000, $35,000. And that, that was for the whole district. So there was just such a huge difference in cost.
So everybody's using Google Classroom except for the high school, or is part of the high school using Google Classroom and part of it using Schoology? So
It's really mixed at the high school. There are teachers who still have information in Schoology. As a matter of fact, I got a great question from a board member this week for a teacher that they knew put all of the math notes in Schoology. And the question was, if Schoology went away, what would that actually do for that teacher? Do they lose all their notes? And then as I had somebody go out and look at it for us, it was actually in OneNote. It's just linking out. So it would be super easy just to have a different platform. That doesn't mean everybody is like that. One of the issues that we need to explore a little bit more is for our specialty staff who, like when they're in academic lab and they want to be able to find kids and what's posted for your homework. There's a thought that it's much more difficult in Google Classroom, but it could be that we just don't understand the settings either and what we have on the enterprise, because generally with Google Classroom, if they know they're competing, they get it fixed. So we just may not know, but I don't have the answer to that. But because it's such a small dollar amount, we would not do that until we have our questions answered. We want to make sure we're not messing somebody up, instructionally. But I will say, even a lot of our curriculum sits in Google, but the link is on Schoology.
I was just going to ask, are we going to vote?
No, so we're just finishing up. So the curriculum and instructional materials and the eliminating the district level consultant. I think those are again, not directly impacting the classroom. So going with that theme, I'm comfortable with those two changes. Is that fair? Anybody else? Generally, yeah.
I can't help but wonder if, particularly when it comes to consultant, if we're able to do a little more in-house at this point. I know we don't, you know better than I, but if at this point, you know, if we need to find another 100 grand, might be a place to look.
I'm in agreement with Michael.
Well, I was gonna say, when it comes to professional development, you know, I know we've had teacher teaching teacher model before. I mean, I don't know if this is eliminating some travel that may not be necessary, you know, I know, or sending as many people, to different things, or just taking some of the professional development and just working on it without actually giving it. I know that's an area that we could possibly do a little bit work on. And to me, if Schoology is not being used anywhere else, then, or if it's only some of the staff using it, I think that could probably go. But curriculum and instructional materials, I'm not sure that we could really do without that sort of stuff, but.
Yeah, I do want to remind the board, this is tied to the curriculum management plan, it's tied to the strategic plan. So, that's one of the reasons we're getting good results. You have to support out in the buildings. And so that's part of the complexity of it, is making sure that we have the funds to actually continue the work. The other thing I just want to remind the board, one of the reasons that we're challenged with this is last year, in order to basically try to get the budget lower, we pulled out the entire $800,000 of that curriculum side. And then we used ARP and we messaged that. That message did not help us this year. So anything we pull out in curriculum, I can tell you right now that as we're starting to build or think about FY27, it is going to be incredibly challenging budget year. And we can't zero out our curriculum again. The first year I came here, we were almost zero. And the board wondered why we had 11 elementaries with 11 different math programs. Well, if you don't buy people what they need, and we had a teacher stand in front of us from the high school just at our last meeting talking about Spanish books that were 20 years old and have VHS tapes in them. That is not appropriate resources for our teachers. So there's a lot on these lines that help us provide really what they need. So there's always some in the rumor mill when they see something like this posted. Oh, one consultant is like 400,000. That is not the case. There are lots of things that sit in those buckets.
Well, I was also going to say, I think I noted this earlier, that, we've had an exceptional year. I mentioned this earlier to others that it takes 3 years to see the results, right, of change. Our strategic plan, we're seeing, great change and great movement. It's the greatest year of student achievement gains that we've had in quite a few years, right? We've had more schools of distinction than ever in the history of state recognizing these things. We've had more of our schools in the top 5 in Connecticut and at every level, and some being acknowledged nationally. And a lot of other amazing accolades for schools, especially even things like New Lebanon, right? And we've seen a lot more excellence in the areas of that and movement. So for us to then turn around and say we wanted to make sure that curriculum and instruction was, matching on all levels, vertically and horizontally, and it's like, I guess we can get rid of some of the curriculum and instructional materials. It's detrimental. It's detrimental not just to our students, it's detrimental to our staff as well, I think, in providing our students what they need. And I see
Well,
Wendy's.
Can we at least stop with the international travel to Scotland and Ireland for people? Maybe we shouldn't pay for that.
So I do want to address that because that question was asked of me, and that was, and I know the person that you're talking about, that actually was fully paid for. I'm not saying that it's great to have people traveling, just even the look of that, but it was fully paid for. That was not operational funds for the person who went to study colleges overseas. To go, the whole thing. By the grant. By the grant, I'm sorry, not by us. Yeah.
okay, sorry, did someone else have a hand? Jen, you had a hand, right?
No, I was just going to piggyback and support what Karen was saying about, having curriculum and instruction materials. These are the tools that help not only the teachers, but help the students. And again, I just find it mind blowing that we as a district are actually have to consider cutting curriculum and instruction materials that aid the students in their learning and cutting into their potential. I just find it absolutely mind blowing that it's come down to this conversation.
I hear you. So, I think we've sort of run the gamut here, at least that we have for this evening. I think that the big takeaway, which is the big number, that we all agree on in some form, although not happily, is transportation. I think it's best to do that so that we have the least impact on the classroom, that being the theme. So we're somewhere between that 730 and 745 scenario for the high school, yielding $2 to $2.5 million of savings. I heard consensus on nothing else, with the exception of 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board on some of the other items, is my understanding. I'm not saying I didn't hear absolute no's, but I definitely didn't hear consensus. ALP, we had taken a sense of the meeting, but if someone else has raised that, that's their prerogative. And pay to play, I thought we had taken a sense of the meeting, but, have at it if we have to also bring that back. But I think the community sort of spoke on that as well. But now I believe there's a weekend. I think we're asking the BET to come back, hopefully. And so, Karen, I turn it back over to you, but otherwise I think hopefully I assume we'll hear from people over the weekend on where they stand on many of these items.
So as I stated before, I drafted a letter that I'd love to have the board sign off on, not just from me, but from all of us. I can share with you later, as I'd like to send it to them, basically respectfully asking them to urgently reopen the discussions on the, fiscal year 25-26 operating budget. Their discussions on that for the Greenwich Public Schools. I think, the RTM spoke strongly as well with their sense of the meeting resolution. So, we have two boards here, asking them to please take a look back. It's clear that we want to be able to work with them. We understand the importance of the fiscal responsibility here, and the town's budgetary restraints, but we are prepared to work with the BET and sort of consider reasonable reductions where feasible. However, a cut of 4.1 to 5 million is far beyond what can be absorbed without causing serious harm to our educational program. And, I think, I will happily share that letter. I'd love to get everybody's sign off, but I do think hopefully, and I know that there are some BET members online and watching tonight, that they know that we are willing to try to meet with them, but just remember that the impact of these cuts is not abstract. Reductions at this scale threaten the educational opportunities we offer our students and really, are going to jeopardize kind of the longstanding reputation of Greenwich Public Schools. And we'd really like to find a way to sort of meet in the middle somewhere, if possible. So I'll share that with the board after the meeting and see if we can share that as a group. I see Dr. Jones's hand up.
So because we do have BET members in the audience, they can at least nod for me if I'm correct. Because the one thing people have been asking about is the timing. It is my understanding they would need to post the meeting tomorrow, and it needs to be voted on by Monday. That is the last date. So they're nodding yes. So it would need to be posted tomorrow.
And I will, like I said, happily send that a letter out. I really want them to know that we are trying our best here to work with them, and there are no easy answers and no easy solutions. We have a responsibility to protect, the future, for our children and the children of Greenwich, and ensure that we are, helping to educate, and send out, fully educated and support, adults into the world when they leave our school system. And I think it's clear we're willing to put everything on the table to look at. It's just, there's going to be some hard decisions coming. I just don't know how we're going to reach 4.1, and I truly hope that they will, take into account some of the miscalculations and things like that, and work with us, to know that we're willing to meet them partially, if possible.
Cody wants to speak to.
Mhm.
I would not be in support of that letter. Having spent many hours going through the details of this, I don't think we've fully done our job. There's definitely, I think honestly, what I observe is mostly political theatrics here. I understand the dynamic that it's much easier to not actually put something forward, to just say that everything is so difficult and the sky is falling, that a 5% increase turning into a 3% increase is, the end of the world or whatever, and then try to force the hand of our counterparties. I think that's irresponsible. There are things we can do. Not all of them are agreeable. That's our job, is to have competing priorities and to evaluate where we think the highest, best outcome is per dollar spent as it relates to our strategic priorities and student outcomes. I thought we were on track to have a more serious discussion about this. It became apparent to me tonight that that's not the case, which I'm disappointed in. But it won't matter, because the way that the board has decided to operate starting tonight is to ignore the Republican caucus's view. But my hope was that we were going to be much more constructive about this. And so you can do that because you have 5 votes for a letter, but definitely do not have my support. And I think I've probably spent more time on the individual line items, most of which are not presented here, than at least most of the folks here. So it's just, I think this is a real shame.
Well, Cody, do you have a motion to make?
No.
Oh, well then, if you're not going to offer a solution and you're just going to criticize the rest of us, if you have a motion to make, that's a practical motion, you can make it. Nobody's preventing you.
If I make a motion that loses 3-5, it doesn't matter, right? So I
Well,
can
you-
recognize the practical reality.
People who have spoken in favor of start time changes, which is a high dollar amount. But if you're not going to make the motion, then what's the difference?
We have not done what we've been tasked to do yet. We don't have a 4.5 change to the budget yet.
Okay, but you could get halfway there if you're willing to make a motion.
I think we had kind of concluded the meeting, and honestly, it's 9 o'clock, and we've asked for people to send us emails and to continue our analysis, and I think we should leave it there. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'd second that.
Okay, well, then I guess all in favor, I guess we'll do it verbally. Laura, do you want to take the vote?
I mean, I'll take the vote. Are we taking a voice vote on the motion to
Kathleen
adjourn?
Stowe, yes.
Okay. Sophie,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
I'm a no. If you want to keep working, I'm ready to work.
Yes.
We stand adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.